recorded.
All right. Okay. Introduction of this morning's speaker. I have Martina.
Thank you, President Tina. I'm absolutely thrilled and excited about this presentation this morning because I'm not familiar with the committee, so excited to learn because I have a real passion for this subject. Jim and Marjorie Dawson joined Rotary in 2011 to build relationships and serve the global community. Jim Dawson is a retired professional engineer and has been chair of International Service Committee many times and has developed 5 global grants in Honduras, 2 in India, Nepal, and currently has a global grant providing optical surgery equipment in Malawi, Africa. Marjorie Dawson is a retired president of a pipeline company, a past president of the Rotary Club of Norfolk Sunrise, and is currently chair of the Norfolk General Hospital Board and chair of Grace United Church. Jim and Marjorie have been working, and I'm not going to say this correctly, so I hope you will correct me on the pronunciation, but I'm going to try because I've been practicing. Have been working with the Pikangikum. Can you just tell me how you say it? Good.
Pikangikum is the right pronunciation.
First Nation for the last 8 years to build capacity and encourage students to stay in school by establishing and enhancing the outdoor and music programs. Presently, they are working to bring greater understanding and awareness of Indigenous history, culture, and values. They are the co-chairs of the District 7090 Rotary HIP, and HIP stands for Honoring Indigenous Peoples Committee, and have a passion to build relationships and promote community capacity where everyone can reach their full potential. We are so excited to have you join our meeting this morning and look forward to sharing your knowledge.
Okay, can you see that screen all right?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
Right. Marjorie and I are the co-chairs of the District 7090 Rotary Honoring Indigenous Peoples, or HIP committee. And that's what we're here to talk about today. We'll start by orienting you a little bit to Canadian Indigenous history, and then speak about Rotary's HIP's mission and activities. To move forward into the future, we must know where we come from and where we are now. Is that not what our history teachers told us? If we don't learn from our failures, we fail to mature. I want to be very clear, this is not a guilt trip. It's just about making a common understanding of the past so that we can move forward together. So let's start by having a look at some Indigenous history. Indigenous people have lived in this area for at least 16,000 years. The so-called woodland peoples were in permanent villages in our area in the Great Lakes and farmed the 3 sisters, corn, beans, and squash around 1000 BCE. The 5 nations, the Iroquois or Haudenosaunee as we now know them, formed the Confederacy about 1190 and with a well-organized system of self-government codified in the Great Law of Peace, which gave equal rights to women and based on a central council with checks and balances that protected the rights of the individual 5 founding nations, something that we could learn from today. One of the earliest treaties between the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois, and the settlers is the Treaty of Wampum, which was between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch. It features 2 strips on a white background representing 2 boats traveling down the same river, each charting their own course. It represented the understanding that the 2 parties would share the land and respect each other, but not interfere with sailing of the other ship. This is very important to understand because this is the way First Nations look at all the treaties and subsequent things that go on. Residential schools first opened in 1830 and were not so much schools as a way to assimilate, literally to take the Indian out of the child, as was reported at the time, and to prepare the so-called Indians to be servants and laborers. The last school was closed in 1996, which means that when most of our children or even grandchildren were in school, some First Nations children were still in a residential school. As we move into the modern era, we've begun in Canada to recognize the harms that our practices have had and are taking steps to reconciliation and building more equity into our society. There's been a lot of activity, including the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and in 2007, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2015, with the 94 calls to action, and the report on missing and murdered women in 2019. And just in 2021, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation has been declared on September 30th. So what is Rotary Honoring Indigenous People all about? The Rotary HIP vision is of an all Indigenous and non-Indigenous people working together, interconnected and interdependent for the benefit of future generations. The Rotary HIP board is 50% Indigenous and 50% non-Indigenous, 50% Rotarian and 50% non-Rotarian, and 50% female and 50% male. This is the model of a shared and collaborative approach. So what are concrete steps we can take to move forward together in reconciliation? HIP suggests using a 3-step model. The first one is learning to build relationships, learn and share, and walk together. It is key to any new relationship to build trust and understanding by reaching out and establishing friendships. The second step is to expand cultural awareness by learning and sharing. Once a foundation of friendship and knowledge is built, then you're ready to embark on working together. Now, Margie will now talk about our experience with these steps.
As an example of how we followed the process to build relationships, Jim and I attend powwows, historical gatherings with the Mississaugas of Credit, and in our case are taking Anishinaabe Moen or Ojibwe lessons. We also had a meeting with Gima or Chief LaForme to introduce him to Rotary HIP. We then met with Lloyd S. King school staff, and we were invited to seek shared projects. Other ways to establish connections include inviting Indigenous speakers or community members to events, such as the Great Lakes Watershed Cleanup, and attend powwows or events at friendship centers. And you folks are really lucky because you've got a very active friendship center in Hamilton there. Learning and sharing is so important to deepen your understanding of the issues and cultural perspectives. We had an opportunity to sit in on a 9-month course that Elder Renee Thomas Hill was giving to Six Nation members on reawakening and relearning traditional knowledge. We were so blessed to be able to sit in on that. We've also had speakers on land claims, Native spirituality, and we also attend sharing circles with Indigenous communities. This past fall, our Rotary Club of Norfolk Sunrise hosted a public Indigenous Voices speaker series, responding to the public quest to know more about Indigenous concerns and realities after the discovery of the unmarked graves at residential schools. The third step in the path is walking together, finding projects that can be jointly developed and worked on together. Walking together means that we work on joint projects with Indigenous people. In Bekanjikum, we had a good example of walking together. Jim and I connected with a well-known Anishinaabe artist, Joseph Sajic, in Toronto. And he had some art supplies that he wanted to use to help encourage Indigenous artists. So we drove them up and got them delivered into Bekanjikum. A student artist, Amber Peters, who we knew there, and we also knew at the time that she was really struggling with the loss of her father. She was looking for some art supplies, and so we were able to channel some of the supplies and books to her. And it was really quite neat because Joseph made his name doing woodland style wall murals. And the next thing we knew, Amber was painting murals and said that she thinks she's found her calling. In Bekanjikum, we've worked through the steps in this process over the last 8 years. When we spoke to the band council of this fly-in only community, there's no roads to get there. It's about 500 kilometers northwest of the crow flies of Thunder Bay. We thought that they would say that their highest priority was getting running water to the over 400 homes in this community of 3,000 people. So, yep, they still have outhouses and a kilometer or two to trek to fill up their water carboys. And yeah, they're doing that at minus 40 degrees Celsius. But their highest priority, it turned out, was keeping their kids in school. So to do this, we work with the school on a music program and an outdoor education program. And we've gone from a music class, which literally only had a few guitars in it, that was it, to guitars, pianos, keyboards, violins, drums. It now takes 3 days for the community concert to cover all of the musical acts. Our Rotary Club also sponsors prizes for the Battle of the Bands concert, which is now a large community event run by community members. In the outdoor program, the community went from no canoes in the community to a community where the school curriculum involves a canoe program and a 3-day canoe trip. Along with the joy of friendships we have built with the students, parents, teachers, artists, elders, this relationship has also provided us with some adventure and excitement. We had the opportunity to play ice road trucker and drove the 2,200 kilometers up to Kanjicum, including the 100 kilometers of ice road, delivering 20 mountain bikes for a bike program that we work on with the OPP and New Hope Bikes. With the bike trailer, we also brought along skates and hockey equipment, as well as basketballs that the Raptors donated to us for the basketball camp we delivered while we were up there. In 2019, we went up to Kanjicum to help set up the bike repair trailer for the summer, and also to offer a canoe program. When on the day our canoe camp was to start, we were wakened by a knock on the door at 6 o'clock, and pardon me, community was threatened with a major forest fire. And we were called on to help with coordination of the total evacuation of the community. We have made so many connections and friendships and have seen so many positive changes in this community. We'd like to tell you a little bit about the scope and breadth of the activities that HIP is doing across the country. Rotary HIP has plans and activities in many areas, such as cultural awareness, environmental activities, water solutions, community well-being, and removing barriers to education and youth-to-youth engagement. These are all areas of concern to both Rotary and Indigenous people, and so are areas that we can work together on. A new project that HIP is developing is being piloted this fall at Camp Portha near Peterborough. Youth-to-youth engagement involves young people in a 3-day reconciliation and land stewardship program, which brings together Indigenous and non-Indigenous youth to learn about treaties, traditional teachings, harvest local food and medicine, and local Indigenous culture and heritage. We're really excited about this program, and HIP would like to eventually extend the program to every district across the country. And I think that this may fit really well with your work to develop a Rotaract club at Six Nations Polytechnic. You too can become a HIP ally by going to Honoring Indigenous People. That's all one word, spelled honoring, spelled the Canadian way with you in it, honoringindigenouspeople.com, and signing up as an individual or a club. There is no charge, but it does ask for a commitment to being an active ally. It's also a great resource for books, blogs, videos, and reference materials. If any of you are interested in doing something more on HIP, we'd be happy to help you set up a group of interested people within the club. Or if one or two of you would like to join on the district committee, we'd love to have you join. And then you get regular mailings from us on activities that are going on or available around the district or via Zoom. I'd like to end this presentation with a short video from Gimma Stacy LaForme at the Rotary International Convention in Toronto. It was a great presentation, and here is just a really short clip from it.
It's a pleasure to be here. Your organization, including honoring Indigenous peoples, has done much to raise awareness and bring education to the many Indigenous issues, including education itself. You know, Canada is known as a country, and Rotary is known as an international organization that supports those around the world in need. And honestly, from my heart, I tell you that the Indigenous people of this land and the Indigenous people of the world are in need. So stand with us, work with us, and walk with us. I offer you this poem, which I think is in keeping with the theme of this event. It's simply called Walk With Me. Take my hand, face this world with me. See the world as I see the world. Understand the world as I understand it. Let us learn from each other. Laugh with me, cry with me, fight for me, fight with me. Pray with me, pray for me, face this world with me. Let us walk together. Let us rejoice in the light, or be by my side when the dark claims me. Whatever tomorrow may bring, let us walk together. Let us face it side by side. The first step is to know each other. Remember, no one travels the world alone.
And with that, I would like to take any questions you may have.
Everyone is on mute, so you need to unmute yourselves before asking your questions.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie, question for you regarding the water situation up there. What's the holdup? I guess is the big question. Like, why? It doesn't seem like it would be. I mean, I'm certain it'd be complicated and relatively expensive, but there must be technologies that they've implemented elsewhere in the world that can be implemented up there and don't cost billions.
Right. And that's a really good question. And actually, we were working with a group of people to just get the water started. And so we have a system in place, which is they don't have piping to the houses. So right now it's a delivery system with a delivery truck. We work with a group of people fundraising for that. It's about $25,000 per home to do that. And actually we shamed the federal government into starting to work with us on that. And they matched what had been raised. But right now we've got like 50 homes connected. That's in a community with, although it's 3,000 people, it's only 400 homes. That's another issue. But anyways, so very slowly, it's really a matter of government funding.
Right.
And I know it seems ridiculous. They're like just slightly smaller than Port Dover is a community, and they don't have running water there.
I just can't imagine anybody in Hamilton putting up with their water being off for a couple of days, never mind not having it. So it boggles my mind that these communities don't have water.
Yeah.
Not with that, but the water treatment plant comes and goes. They go in, they get boil water advisories. So not only do you have to go down to the tap and pull it home, then you have to boil it in order to drink it. It's just unbelievable.
Jim and Marjorie, I've been around Rotary for a little while, a few years, but I've never heard of HIP. How long has your committee or the district committee been around as a committee, and how long have you been working together on this organization, like this committee?
And we dropped that off the slide. There's a Rotary HIP has been around, I think, for about 6 years. 2014, I think, is when they started. The district committee was just formed last year. When we got involved with HIP about a year and a half ago. And when we told them what we were doing at Pekanchum, they said, well, why don't you guys start up a local district HIP committee? So we're just really getting started. We have, we've been having meetings for about a little over a year and
I
a
think
half.
it's 2 years, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Jim and Marjorie, are you aware of any forms of Rotary clubs currently on any of the nations across Canada? Whether it's a Rotary Club or Interact, Rotaract, or
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question. I'm sure there are some. You know, there are many reserves that are close to population areas and are likely to have them, but I don't know that offhand.
Yeah,
We do have 50% of our members of Rotary International as Indigenous.
You have to make sure that.
And some of those are Rotary members.
so yeah, I think there was one club up in the north that was being supported by a club in the south, but it wasn't sustainable. It was it wasn't fly-in, but it was one of the far northern communities. So it only could exist with support from a southern club, like because of the dues and that sort of thing. No, I think that your Rotaract, I mean, I'm really excited for that to start up, but yeah.
Actually, there's some changes recently in how Rotary International recognizes some of the clubs, and they've come up with passport clubs and satellite clubs where there's like it's a $5 a year dues if it's sponsored by another Rotary club. So that might be something that's just changed in the last month and a half, 2 months. So that might be something we might want to look into.
Yeah, great.
Now, with HIP, do they do anything with groups? I know out in the East Coast, I'm trying to remember what it's called, KEW. It's Indigenous Women in the Arts, and the provincial government out there and the local towns promote that. And I'm just wondering if they have anything that through HIP, because that might be something where it's actually promoting the specific subject matter.
Yes, an individual club, I think it's a Welland club in our district, is working with the CUSO, who does entrepreneur type activities, and they sponsored an Indigenous entrepreneur to start up her own internet business, providing, I think it's mainly clothing, Indigenous clothing. So that's a good connection with Rotary and business.
Jim and Marjorie, where to start, right? So I think, first of all, by finding a way to participate with the HIP committee, whether it's one of our members representing our club at that committee or however that works. But our club over the years has talked about how can we be involved with the Indigenous community. And here we are, you know, we never really have gotten involved, and it's a matter of knowing where to start, how to ask, right? We have, as you know, we've reached out to the Six Nations Polytechnic. The discussions have started around forming a Rotaract club, but we're far from that yet. It's slow moving on their side while they sort of investigate everything that goes on, while also balancing their very busy work lives, right? So,
Right.
Yeah. But we're maintaining that contact and supporting and still having those conversations. But when we see pictures of those communities in the north, and also know about, you know, the really the epidemic of suicide amongst Indigenous communities, particularly the young people, it really, like, that's a call to action, right? So where do we start? You know, how do we get ourselves involved? How do we find out where the greatest need is? Who do we talk to?
Well, so I would say that one of the things that really attracted us to HIP is that the whole education on both sides. We need to be educated ourselves. When we started this 5, 10, well, actually we've been for 10, but we knew very little about residential schools, about what really happened and so on. And there's all kinds of misinformation out around as well. And so it's just educating ourselves first, no understanding before you start talking to people and making connections, you need to know. So I think that would be the first step, would be educating. That's why I agree with the HIP's approach to educate yourself and your club and your local people and your families. That's the first step to really getting involved. And the second thing is then connecting with communities. And of course, we're very locally here. You're very close to both Six Nations and Mississaugas of Credit. And so watch for their activities. For example, they have powwows and they have a historical gathering. I don't know whether they're going to do it this year or not. I think that it's
The historical gathering, they didn't do it. We're past it.
But just watch for those activities. They have presentations online and activities that are going on a regular basis.
To get to know that and to just learn and find out where the needs are. Two Road Times, which is a local paper, I'm sure you can pick it up around, Stoney Creek, Hamilton area. We can pick them up and you'll see they have craft shows, or they'll have an opportunity they have a learning event going on or something. You can just go, it's the same thing. Like, get on the website for your local friendship center and find out what they're doing. I don't know about the Hamilton one, the Niagara one. We've got a member of our HIP who regularly goes to the drumming circle there. It's kind of just a mix of folks. He also found out through the local friendship center in Niagara, he started to do some Mohawk classes at the library. Those are things to just find out what's going on and once you find out what's going on, then you go to, like Jim and I are taking Anishinaabe classes, which we're doing like through the school at Los King School. And so, yeah, we're the only white guys there, but it's great because we've met like families there and stuff. And that's how we got connected with the LS King School too, was through attending the language lessons there. And so just things like that are really simple ways. There's lots of really great speakers out. If you, somebody wants to come on to the district committee, just sign your name up on we'll send out notes from Rotary clubs all across the country who are having Indigenous speakers. And there's wonderful speakers you can find there. Dawn Lavelle, can't remember her full last name. Anyway, she's from Peterborough, excellent speaker on missing and murdered women, who you can get via Zoom into your meeting. There's all sorts of stuff like that.
Great. Marjorie, what was the name of the newspaper that you said again?
Two Road Times.
Oh, Two Road Times. Thank you. Great suggestions. Thank you. More questions?
I have one more quick question. Have you heard what the communities of places of like Pakanjikum, I get that right, think about the new Ring of Fire, exploration that's happening? Probably not that far from them. It's going to bring a lot of mineral development of the lands there. Probably a lot of employment for folks who live up there, but also, of course, it does take a lot of the resources out of the land. So, too much talk about that?
Yeah, it is a big discussion right now with them. They're not right in the Ring of Fire, but as a community that does not have a road, the roads are coming. They actually put in part of a road to bring their power. We finally got them to they were running on diesel generators for many years, and we finally pushed to get the power generation grid to them a couple of years ago. So that was a great step, but that did bring the road pretty close to the community. And so that's coming up. It's not the first area where there'd be mined is not that close to where Pakanjikum is, but it affects all of their neighboring communities very much. It also is viewed as a potential employer, and that's a big issue with very high unemployment rates. If you could get employment in the north, that would be fantastic. So there is some interest that way. as well. So it's a good thing and bad news. When you put a road in, now you have other vehicles and people and things that happen with that, which means your land is it hurts, the migration of caribou and that type of thing. So there are pluses and minuses to anything like that you have to consider. And so they are looking at that very specifically. And it is a big debate in the community right now.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. If there are no more questions, Olivia, is Hudson going to allow you some time to address our speakers?
Yes. He's right here beside me on his mat. So thank you very much for your presentation today. It was wonderful. And I feel every time we have these types of presentations, I learn a whole lot more about Indigenous people, and way more than I ever learned in school. So it's wonderful. And I appreciate your talk today. And yes, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Olivia. So Jim and Marjorie, we will be in touch. I mean, I'm in your email group now, so I'm receiving some of the information that you've spoken about today, which is wonderful, and I'll make sure to pass that along to the club. And we're going to have some discussion about moving forward and how we can really properly get involved. So I mentioned to you that we carry on now with club business, which you're more than welcome to stay on for. But I also understand that, there are other things going on in your life as well. So whatever you'd like to do, if you want to just drop off the call, that's fine. If you want to stay on, that's fine too. But thank you so much for joining us so early this morning.
No problem, my pleasure.
Thank you. I think we will stay on. We're excited to listen to what other Rotary clubs are doing. So
Fantastic. Okay.